Welcome to News 9 Live, and you are watching On Point with me. And before I introduce you to today's On Point, let's take a quick look at the headlines. At the BRICS summit, Prime Minister Modi tells Putin that India is ready to help end the Russia-Ukraine war. Day after India-China border agreement, Beijing says reach solution on relevant matters. TMC's Kalyan Banerjee suspended after he smashes glass bottle during heated exchange with BJP MP during Waqf Bill JPC meeting. Won't apologize, says Udayanidhi Stalin on Sanatan Dharm remark. At least 15 workers trapped under a debris as under construction building collapses in Bangalore in midst of heavy rain. Delhi government urges Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan to restrict flying diesel buses to the capital amid worsening air pollution. Supreme Court halts bulldozer action on Bahrain violence, main accused and others for a day. Mehbooba Mufti alleges migrant workers pressurized to leave Valley. Police calls it a completely baseless charge. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. The wave of bomb threats targeting Indian Airlines continues to escalate. On Tuesday alone, around 50 flights received bomb threats. On Monday, 30 domestic and international flights operated by Indian Airlines received threats. 3 Jeddah-bound IndiGo flights were diverted to airports in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. At least 79 flights faced bomb threats, mainly on international routes, from Monday night to Tuesday. The flights targeted included 23 from IndiGo, 21 from Vistara, 12 from Akasa, and 23 from Air India, all of which received threats during this period. The incidents involving multiple hoax calls have pushed the total number of such threats received by the airlines this week to around 169. Those hoax targets have targeted multiple carriers including Air India, IndiGo, Akasa Air, Vistara, SpiceJet, Star Air, Airlines, and even impacting international flights. Some threats were sent via social media or email, while others were found written in lavatories. As a result, several flights were diverted or forced to make emergency landing, creating panic among passengers. Bomb squad inspections and disruptions caused have also hit airline financially. The hoax bomb calls have been attributed to factors ranging from malicious intent and attention seeking to mental health issues, disruption of businesses, and operation or pranking. While bomb threats are new, the frequency and impact of these recent incidents have been very debilitating. While most of these threats have turned out to be hoaxes, the airlines continue to face operational challenges. Now, the larger issue is how do we resolve this problem? On Monday, Civil Aviation Minister Mr. Naidu said that the ministry is considering amending regulations to impose stricter penalties, including placing perpetrators on no-fly list. He, however, did admit that authorities have no choice but to take every threat seriously, as it is a question of lives.
As like I said, safety and security is the foremost aspect, and this we follow through the international guidelines itself. And once that protocol is set, then we follow it thoroughly, word by word, whatever rule or whatever protocol that has been set, we follow it thoroughly, each and every point. And as we have seen that we have been getting repeated ones, and most of them are hoax bomb threats. So once this has happened, then we have had multiple meetings. In the last 1 week, I have chaired certain meetings with all the necessary stakeholders within the ministry, and we have our Secretary Walnamji here and DG BCAS, our security regulator Hassanji is also here. And at each and every level, whoever the stakeholders are, we have been calling to the ministry, we have been having multiple meetings. In fact, our BCAS has also been interacting with MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, also on a continuous basis, because they are also an important stakeholder when it comes to these kind of security threats in the country. So at multiple levels, we have been having these meetings, and everyone we have taken in suggestions, opinions of all of them. And from the ministry, we have thought of some legislative action also, if it is required, which direction should be moved in. And we have come to the conclusion that there are two areas that we can explore. One is the amendment in aircraft security rules. Aircraft security rules is something which deals with the security aspect when it comes to within the aircraft, how do we deal with the security issues, concerns, and there is a strict rules that have been laid out. And we have seen that if you can do a little amendment there, it can specifically strengthen the cause which we are fighting for right now. So one of the idea that we want to propagate by changing these rules is, once we catch hold of the perpetrator who is behind this, we want to put them in the no-fly list. And with that idea or with that thought process, we are trying to amend the aircraft security rules, which is already there. We feel that there is some betterment that we can do, and with our discussions, we are trying to amend it.
It is estimated that each hoax bomb threat cost the airline around 3 crore. This includes fuel, wastage cost, landing and parking charges at the airport, and the cost of putting up customers in hotels and providing them other facilities. However, other than the financial cost, there is also a negative impact on India's aviation industry. These bomb threats are not only a security issue, but they also create a negative picture as to why Indian airlines are being targeted. On this issue, I am joined by Yashwardhan Azad, former information commissioner, but someone who has served and had a long stint as an IPS officer and in intelligence bureau; Sanjay Lazar, aviation expert, CEO Aviation; and Major General V.K. Datta, someone who now deals with counter-terrorist operation. I'll straight away go to Mr. Azad. My first question is, why this spike? What is your assessment?
Well, I think it's a targeted, it's no longer a hoax here. We know all the reasons, has been spelled out by you. It can be a prankster, it can be a passenger who's arriving late. So all this we've heard. But it's a little disappointing that till now the minister spoke well. He spoke about his problems, but legislation is not going to, get us anywhere. The reason, this is a targeted attack coming from a VPN network, coming from all the cybersecurity experts, whether it is coming through, the mail or VPN networks and other places. It could be the use of bots. It could be the use of one of these, places in Europe from where this is being directed. And there are many, many links to it, of course, and I'm sure that the intelligence agencies will be poring over it. Even in terms of reaction, I understand all the aircraft drills could be done, but it's quite clear that it's a hoax, call, because our checks are pretty strong, at least at Delhi airports and other metros. So we should amend and restrict our the reaction which we are doing, so that we save some time and man hours, because this has actually caused havoc. But we should not go the legislative way. It doesn't make any difference, because of all these hoax calls, we have not been able to catch even one. And even if you give a stricter punishment, no-fly list should be absolutely on. Everyone agrees with it. Anybody found, they should be put on the no-fly list. But on the other hand, it requires a much more deeper study and research, and putting the minds together of all our, anti-terrorist agencies, the intelligence agencies, to get behind it, because it's critical now. It's almost paralyzing our aviation industry.
It's paralyzing our aviation industry. Let me go across to General Datta. Do you think that it's directly linked with the sort of developments that have taken place in Canada, sir?
Yes. See, we have to analyze who could be trying to target the aviation industry and the economic power of India by the virtue of giving such threats and trying to derail the aviation industry in India, and trying to showcase to the world that flying by the Indian carrier is not safe. So if we look at the international scenario, who are the people? Guru Parvant Singh Pannu, you know, in the care of the CIA and the Americans in Canada. Now, what happened to the Kanishka aircraft in 1985 was a bombing by a Canadian Sikh who planted a bomb, and the Air India flight was lost, killing 329 passengers. And the Canadian government had gotten early warning, and they did nothing about it. So when we talk about international terrorism, such countries which are involved in harboring terrorists on their soil and making them their baby, and they are now giving threats to the Indian aviation and the Indian government that from 1st to 19th of the next month, people should avoid flying by the Indian Airlines or the Indian carriers. So who else? So it is not only an individual, there are people and the agencies involved behind this, and we have to take that into account. But at the same time, while we know that these are hoax calls, as per the international aviation rules, you cannot take a call lightly. You have to ensure the safety of the passengers who are traveling in an aircraft. But if an aircraft is taken off from Indian soil, from any of our airport security is foolproof. Our agencies which are involved in frisking of the passengers and scanning the baggages of the passengers should be answerable if a bomb gets through to any aircraft. So my take is that while the DGCA, the aviation industry, the rules and regulations related to aviation are quite stringent, at the same time, we also have to make the punishment very, very stringent. If somebody has done this, he's a terrorist. We should say that there was a passenger getting late and he made an off call.
General, there are two things here. Mr. Lazar, I want you to come in here because that's the grey zone. It is assumed that the person who is making a hoax call is not a terrorist. But if you go by 169 hoax calls and counting, if you put it together, it's an act of terror. You are disrupting an entire financial food chain.
Thank you for having me, Karthikeya. First of all, I'd just like to point out one thing. You raised an important question to General Datta, and he correctly replied. I was on your show about 10 days ago when this fracas with Canada broke out, and I warned at that point and on other channels as well, please be careful. You will now see all sorts of problems. Treat every flight like there will be a bomb threat on board. And it turned out to be, apocalyptic, because on the next day, on the Monday, we started seeing these coming through. On Tuesday, our minister said it's a prankster. On Wednesday, he said we'd arrested somebody from Chhattisgarh, some child, for 3 things. But by then, we'd already gone to 30. Today, we are at 170. And let me tell you, this is cyber terror. For all those who say we don't have laws, please, we have plenty of laws on our books. And one of the simplest law I'll cite, forget the IT Act, forget the BNS, I can cite sections of those. But Section 3 of the Suppression of Unlawful Acts Against Aircraft.
Mr. Lazar, websites have reported that India in last 72 hours have lost 500 crores.
Well, that just shows. Well, I would not know about the figure as 500 crores, but it's a significant amount. Okay, I'm looking at the entire 9-day period. This is cyber terror, as your first guest pointed out. This is crime. This is terrorism, and let's treat it like that. Let's not talk of no-fly lists and everything. Let's put them in jail for life. Let's talk to the FBI, talk to the NSA, through our intelligence agencies, through our military intelligence. Let's talk to Germany. Let's talk to UK, where they're spoofing these things. Bring the social media teams on board. I'll remind you of 9/11. 9/11 happened and America was in shock. The following 6 months later, President Bush signed the Homeland Security Act. 12 months later, they had a Homeland Security team. And today, even if you whisper, a bomb threat on a telephone to somebody else privately, you get arrested. You're clapped in irons. I mean, we need to make an example. We need to track them down. How can a country, nuclear power like ours, with one of the biggest armies in the world, not be, and some of the biggest IT professionals the world has ever seen. Google and all of those guys' heads are Indian. We can't track down these chaps.
Okay.
I mean, it just shows we've lost our way.
Mr. Azad, do you think that there is some change in SOP which is required? And how do you have been part of the services, sir. How do you deal with the issue of hoax call when it becomes a sort of a strategically, when it becomes a tactic of larger ability of an organization to target aviation industry, where it becomes a sort of a synchronized affair? How do you deal with it if it's not a lonesome act?
See, Karthikeya, earlier these hoax calls used to come and we were able to, identify all those calls. Something coming from Delhi or Noida, a passenger getting late or a kind of a prankster, and we were able to take action. Now, the question is put them on a no-fly list or whatever. But here the situation is gone out of hand and we have to find out who these guys are. So the most important thing is that today you have to, talk to the Americans, because these VPN networks we are not able to crack. Talk to those, European allies or something, and we'll be certainly able to track these. And I'm of the opinion this is coming directly from certain places inimical to the interests of India, whether it has come from the Panuns or whether it's come to the Canadians or comes from wherever. This is a very, very important thing. And today, let me tell you that the attacks against India will only come from these quarters. It is the cyber area which is the most critical area. And yes, we have to put our act together in that cyber security also, because we have 13, 14 agencies, doing it. And what we need is a coordinated kind of approach. For example, in Israel, you have the, IDF unit, I think 810, which is one place which directs the cyber attacks, and look at the kind of response they gave to the Iran missile attacks. So we have to do something seriously, much beyond a mere attack on the airlines industry. Tomorrow it might get very, very serious, trying to attack our core sectors too. So we need an offensive capability, and we also need to now reach out to all our friends and other agencies, because obviously all these days we have not been able to find out. We need to crack the source, and that's critical.
We were taken by surprise. A lot of flights were called back halfway from Europe, A lot of flights had to be diverted to different airports. So one, there is an issue of intelligence that, we were lacking the awareness that something as directed as this would happen. And the second is, sir, how do you distinguish and ensure that the flight is not affected in terms of whether it's a prank or a real call? How do you make those decisions in the real time? You have been there. In fact, you led the Indian team to Pakistan. You must have made those real decisions. Team kahan se jayegi, kidhar jayegi, kaise jayegi, kahan ruki, kya karegi. How do you make those real decisions when you have flyers on board and you have to take a call? Ye prank hai or is this the real thing?
But one of the things, Karthikeya, I think that we'll have to become a little tougher, like the Israelis. When I'm talking about an amended SOP, after all, we are being affected. Now, all right, following international rules and regulations is fine, but we are 100% sure about, say, the kind of checkings we have in Delhi or the other metro places. Maybe there are hardly any few airports where the checking is not very, very strong. So then you have to go on, whether you put a little more marshals to shore up the confidence of the people, let them know that there is a marshal, let them know that our checkings are absolutely okay. Because if we go on following all the rules, tomorrow all our flights are going to be 4 hours late. And I can tell you from my personal experience how people are suffering like hell, going to hospitals, taking the needies to here, the man hours, the jobs, etc., etc. So you have to do something, amend the SOP and crack the sources. That's the most critical thing. The time is gone of discussing whether to put on no-fly list.
I think you said something very important, very simple but very important. Very important. General Datta, the line which Mr. Azad used was having faith in your capacity, whether you have foolproofed the airline or not. In fact, if you think you have the faith in your own capacity, whether you have proofed it, then you would know that it's a hoax call. Isn't that? Isn't that boiling down to the assumption that you know that you have done a solid job and there is nothing on here?
Absolutely. See, being from special forces and been dealing with counter hijack operations. And an aircraft is vulnerable when it is on the ground under maintenance at the airfield, where people are entering, going and checking, and there are all kind of engineers and people who are cleaning the aircraft and checking various things. That is one point where security must be tightened up so that every person who's entering an aircraft, his validity, his identity checked. Next is the baggage which goes in. While the baggage, there are some booked baggages and there are some passenger baggages. If you remember a few years back, every passenger had to identify his own bag before boarding the aircraft. And you knew that the passenger who boarded the aircraft, he has checked his baggage and confirmed that is his baggage. If the aircraft blows off, that guy is going to get blown off along with the aircraft. And thereafter, we also now following the protocol of putting the baggage through X-ray. So now the thing is that we must strengthen our own systems at the airfield, where the maintenance of aircraft takes place, while it is being refueled, while the baggage is going in, while the passengers are boarding. So there is no denying that if our system is foolproof, we don't have to worry about the HOAX calls. Let them be. We are confident that we have checked out everything. Every person responsible for his job must give a signed certificate that he has checked this and he authenticates that it is fully safe. So these are the checks and the balances which are carried out at various levels by the people on the ground, the maintenance staff, the security, whether it's the CISF.
General, you have worked very closely
police.
with the Israelis. How do they do that?
See, the thing is that while the Israelis have the very system of checking what we do today in India, the complete screening and identification, they also come and sometimes interview every passenger that did he get a package or a gift from somebody in the last 1 hour, 2 hours, whom he didn't know personally. Is he carrying something? Sometimes what happens that when you're carrying a hand baggage, somebody is coming, ki mera packet deliver kar dena, a friend of mine. They do an interview with the passengers on the critical flights that there should be nobody who's picked up a packet which does not belong to him. Besides the other activities related to scanning, screening, sniffing, using the chemical detectors to find out any chemical or the explosive. And the dogs, the sniffer dogs, they check the baggage. So these are the protocols which are followed by the Israelis, and the same protocols are being followed here in India also. Only thing is that nobody should go lax. When you see a person scanning the baggage or the hand baggage, the person who's sitting there has to be very, very attentive. He cannot just be, lackadaisical on his attitude on checking that thing. Being from an organization where we are dealing with counter-terrorism, I know that there are still means by which you can actually take an explosive in. It is possible even today. There are so many type of explosives which cannot be detected by an X-ray. There are non-metallic things. There are non-metallic detonators which cannot be detected. So there are so many things. But we have to be absolutely up to the level of the international terrorist organizations and their modus operandi, and our people who are checking that.
Absolutely, you are right. Absolutely. After the pager operation which the Israel has done in Lebanon, I don't know how many terrorists or the terror organizations would have got the idea to spoof the normal electronic gadgets which have become part and parcel of life. But just to give an idea of people, Sanjay, can you just tell us, when it comes to one airline, how many people are involved in clearing one airline when it comes to the ground operation? For example, just to give an idea to the people, when you are preparing a 747, an international flight, what does it take to get it up, sir? Just to give an idea to our viewers.
Well, Karthika, I'd like to point out, I think General Datta just mentioned El Al, and so did you, Israelis. I want you to know a fact: at every station that they operate around the world, they carry their own guards. They have their own security apparatus. They have their own men manning the X-ray machines. They have machine gun commandos surrounding. If you go to Mumbai airport, where it comes regularly, you'll see they create a perimeter around the aircraft, and their machine gun guards, they are screening every bag. So General is absolutely right. They have a foolproof system. Number two is, whatever rules we want to change, we must remember India is a signatory to ICAO, and we have to follow ICAO guidelines. So diversions, etc., are a necessary evil in case the bomb is there. I had also said a couple of times on various channels a week ago that we have to prepare every flight as though every flight before takeoff has a bomb threat. To answer your question, how many people? You typically have at least 130 odd people on a wide body 777 from the check-in counters up to the gates who look after a flight. To look after purely the security, because we've got a lot of mechanization today and x-rays and machines, etc., you'd still have over 20 security staff who look after just the baggage and around the aircraft and inside the aircraft. Okay, there are at least 4 to 6 on every wide body large fleet aircraft who are screening the aircraft before passengers board. There are people who screen the cargo holds. There are people who monitor the aircraft perimeter, and there are people who monitor the baggage once it's loaded onto a belt. From the time it leaves the belt and goes to an X-ray machine, it carries on forward into the baggage makeup area. There are at least 4 guards there. So there are guards apart from workers. So, you're talking of a large number of people who are monitoring these bags. So it's not that somebody could just run in and slip something in unless they were hand in glove with a system.
So you are saying there are 2 things. One is the people involved in getting the aircraft up, and then there's another issue, which is how do you monitor those who are involved in the process of getting the aircraft up? Because it all comes down to 100 people.
It comes to 100 people. Fortunately, the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security has these people pre-screened. Remember, everybody who comes into contact with an airport or the aircrafts are BCAS screened. So we go through, very stringent security checks, police verifications, they go back to your native place. They do a lot of background checking. So they're checked before you are issued with the BCAS AEP, Airport Entry Pass, whether it's Mumbai, whether it's Delhi, whether it's Bangalore or any of the Indian airports. You have to be certified by the BCAS to enter an airport and go. And even then, you have different areas of entry. So you have a red pass, which is certain specified passes. You have an orange pass, you have a green pass, and you have one that is all airports, all areas. Like, most of us pilots and crew get, cabin crew and flight crew get those passes. Engineers get those passes. Senior security agency people, they are vetted thoroughly. So that's how,
So the bottom line is in the last part, Mr. Azad, what is more important, punishment which acts as a deterrence, or eternal vigilance, which is the price of, in a different phrase you say, is the price of liberty. So I think it boils down to vigilance, sir.
Absolutely right. It's eternal vigilance. And Karthikeya, let me tell you in the end also another thing, that being associated with these airport security drills and these passes, we are also aware of the loopholes. So if it is important that you have the internal vigilance so strong that you're able to amend your SOP. I understand it, but ICAO can also be told that if every flight is being, almost attacked, cyber attacked, then we have to have a solution for it. We just can't sit for another 3 months and take all these, attacks on us without responding. So 2 things. One is internal vigilance should be strong. The legislative route, I think, is nothing. It does not deter any kind of criminal acts or anything. Do it at your leisure. And of course, cooperating with all the agencies outside to have a crack at these VPN networks, wherever these attacks are so strong.
I asked you a question, you didn't give me the detail. When you went to Pakistan, you made those choices. I think, you had once mentioned. So my question was in relation, how do you make those choices? Who gets to make that choice, sir? Is there an SOP for that? When the flight is on air, who gets to make that final call that it needs to come down? It needs to be parked.
That is, of course, a template, as the previous speaker said, that, it has to be taken, gone down, goes to a particular place, when there again is checked, it's a secured area, the bomb squad, etc., is called in. But the decision of what to take and is what to do immediately at the HOAX calls, if at all, if it is only an international drill, then you are left with no option. But when I went to Pakistan, of course, the decisions had to be made by me, whether you are going to Peshawar by aircraft, or whether you go by a bus at night and suddenly you change and again say, no, we are again going by the aircraft. So no, these are on-the-spot decisions, and these are operational ones, which are a little, different from the rules that we follow over here. That's a mission. So it's up to you.
Okay, it deserves a book. One day I hope there's a proper book on that. Sanjay, you wanted to come in?
I did. You asked this question of Mr. Azhar. I wanted to just point out we are governed by the Tokyo Convention and the Tokyo Convention Act. The pilot in command has the decision, and he or she will take the decision of whether to divert or not, or what they do. Typically, they do follow what is the government's laid down SOP and and the central ICAO's thing. But it is the pilot, it's the commander who decides typically. Very few airlines will tell a commander, don't divert or don't deviate, because the Tokyo Convention
So you're
says
saying that the buck stops with the pilot in this case.
Absolutely.
So if you're saying that the buck stops with the pilot in this case, it means that the pilot, apart from taking care of the entire thing, will have to factor what he needs to do at that point of time. Because, I was just reading newspapers and couple of planes made a U-turn and came back. They made a halfway U-turn and came back, which means that it ultimately boils down to relay of information from ground and the decision which pilot makes, sir.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So where do the
Yeah.
Where do the other agencies come in then?
The other agencies only relay information. They relay information from the ground, but it is, United Nations law, ICAO law says it is the pilot in command. That's the powers of the commander. Tokyo Convention Act. It's set in stone. It's 1973. It's not something new, and we have also passed it into law in India as the Tokyo Convention Act. So it is the PIC. Simple. He takes the call. He might divert to Canada like we saw one aircraft do, or he might decide to turn around and come back to London, or if he has fuel, like we've seen some aircraft which were going to Saudi Arabia and Europe that turned around and came back. We saw recently a Vistara aircraft that was going to London. He decided to divert to Frankfurt and clear his checks there. It's all the pilots. He bases it on fuel. He bases it on proximity. He bases it on how much of a danger they ascertain they may be or may not be. He also bases it on the length of flight that is completed. And there is, you have to understand, all flying crew and airline crew, as well as ground staff, security staff, go through this BCAS training, which is a 5-day, 6-day intensive bomb disposal, bomb threat training. So they have very bare knowledge. So if you've flown for 10 hours, it can't obviously be a type of pressure bomb, or General Datta will be able to tell. There are some that get activated by height. There are some that get activated by pressure. There are some various detonation sequences. So when you've done 8 hours of a 10-hour flight, very difficult.
I know. I have a question for Mr. Datta, because I need to close the show. The question for Mr. Datta will come on deterrence. So what's the deterrence? Is vigilance the deterrence? Is punishment the deterrence?
See, one is a defensive action, one is offensive action. Defensive is that please protect yourself, have your systems in place which ensure that nothing of a type of bomb can get into an aircraft. And the offensive is that you, through the cyber connectivity, find the perpetrators and catch them and punish them. Because if you don't do that, this will become a joke. Every aircraft which is taking off is fully loaded with fuel. Sometimes they just can't turn back because they have to shut the fuel before landing. But if it's done a few hours of flying, then maybe he's lighter, he can land in the nearest airfield. So therefore, that is a loss to the airlines and to the country, because that is the loss of the cost of the fuel you're wasting. It has to be ejected in the air.
Absolutely.
Just wasted tons and tons of fuel.
Absolutely.
So that is it. So we have to be defensive, proper protocol, and offensive to catch the perpetrators.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Azhar. Thank you, Mr. Azhar. And thank you, General Datta, for joining me on this show. 169 and counting. Yes, it is 169 and counting. And so much of disruption, so much of loss of money, so much of problem for the passengers, so much of delay, and most important of all, the tension or the ordeal which the people undergo when they somehow come to know that there is a talk that there is a bomb on the flight and the flight is being diverted. So I think, it also impacts the overall environment of the industry, but in the Indian case, it looks like a targeted attack on the Indian aviation sector.